Whitaker here to give you another Photoshop tip. So let's get started. We're going to take this image, and what I'm wanting to do is I want to get rid of this chair. I want to lighten up the side of her face a little bit, and I want to add some more color to the background. So what I've done, you can actually see kind of what I've finished with here, but I'm going to show you exactly how I did that. And I'm here to tell you that I don't know the only way to do this. I'm sure there are tons of ways to do it, and probably even easier ways. But this is just a quick, down, dirty, simple way to take this image and make it what I want it to be. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this image and lighten up the side of her face a little bit. So if you're familiar with layers, the first thing I'm going to do, and I have a Wacom tablet I'm using with a stylus, I'm going to drag it down and make a separate layer. And this is just a really quick thing that you can do to lighten up the side of her face. Now, I will tell you there's lots of programs out there that you can do this really quickly as well. But this is just a quick way I learned a long time ago on how to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the Control key and the M key at the same time. And I think for you Mac users, it would actually be the Command key and the M key. But I'm going to do that. And what I get is a graph. And in order to find the darkest area that I'm wanting to lighten on her face, I'm actually going to move this aside. I'm going to press the Alt key. You see I have an eyedropper. Once I pulled this curves tablet up, it actually gave me an eyedropper. So I'm going to hit the Alt key. I'm going to hit the left click key. And what it does is it gives me a place on where this particular color tone falls onto the graph. Okay, so you can see that. Now, all I'm going to do very simply is I'm going to push the Page Up button. That's all I'm going to do. And what you're going to see is that area is going to start to lighten up. The problem with that is it also lightens up the rest of the photograph, right? So you can see that the curve has changed. I'm going to say OK. And now I'm going to go in and I'm going to actually make an adjustment to fix what I just did. So I'm going to drag this down, make myself a layer mask. I'm going to grab a brush. And as you can see, because the layer mask is white, we actually need to use a black paint to paint away this layer mask. So I'm going to switch to the black. I've got my brush. It's a very soft brush. I'm using this soft round pressure brush. But I do have, in my brush settings, I do have it turned off so that it's not a pressure brush, but it's just a, let me just show you real quick. Pull that open real fast and I'll just show you. If I do, sorry, that's not what I want. I want the brush settings. Hang on. If I pull up brush settings, and you can see the shape dynamics is selected and the control is off so that it's not a pin pressure. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to go in here and I actually want to alleviate, and I've got my opacity set to 100. I want to alleviate all this lightness that I caused with what I just did. So all of this is going to go. And I certainly don't want the bright part of her face to be washed out. So I'm going to take that off as well. So here I go. All I'm doing is just brushing off what I just did on just the areas of the image that I want to brush off. Now, as we look at this, I can actually turn this off, and you can see exactly where I brushed out and where I've left. So I need to go in and get some of this down here. I want to grab her hair right through here. And all I have left is that side of the face that I want to lighten. So if we look at this, really there's some other areas that I could lighten too. If you look at her arm right here next to her dress, I could lighten that. So I'm going to switch this back to white because my mask is black. That brings back in what I just painted out. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, and that will lighten up that area of her arm, as you can see. The other thing I can do is if I want to bring her hair in a little lighter, maybe I'll drop the opacity to 50 or so, and I can actually brush over her hair, and it will be a little bit lightened, but not tremendously. I can also, if I want to, bring out just a little bit of these shadows in her dress. That's up to you what you want to do, or maybe even a little bit in these flowers. So if I turn that bottom layer on again, you can see what I've actually brushed and what I have not brushed. Okay? So that's a quick and easy way to lighten that up. Now, I'm going to go ahead and drop this layer because we're going to do something else. I want to show you how I can bring the background in and fix that. So I'm going to drop this layer down, and I did that by hitting Control E, or you can do Command E, and that drops the layer. So now you just have one layer. But I'm going to go ahead and drag this down, make another background copy. I have 2 layers now. And what I want to do is I actually want to replace this chair with some of these reds and the purples that are actually in this background. I don't want the chair there. So I found another image of this same child in the same lighting, that what I can do is I can go in and grab part of this background and bring it into that image. The only problem is this: because the focal length is different, you can see that this background is much softer than this background, right? So I've got to alleviate that. Now, I will tell you that this image is going to end up being a painting. And so it's not as critical because of that, because when I paint it, it's all going to be different anyway. But if I were to do this and just want to sell it to the mom and I wanted that background back there, I would first need to soften this background before I clipped it and brought it into that one. So what you can do is you can actually go into filter, you can go into blur, and you can go into surface blur. And what that does is it just puts a blur on top of the image. And there you have it. It's blurred. And so I can grab it and take it in. Now, the one thing I didn't do is I did not make an extra layer that time. So hold on just a second while my computer renders this. I'm going to go back. I'm going to undo that. Just undo surface blur. I'm going to make a layer copy on that. And then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do a filter, blur, surface blur. Where'd it go? There it is. Okay, so I'm going to do it again. You can see the radius is set at 15. The threshold is set at 43. And I'm just going to say okay. It doesn't really matter too much, because what I'm going to do now, if it's just a little bit too blurred, because I can look at this and compare, it's not too far off, but I can actually drop the opacity just a little bit if I want to, so it's not quite as blurred as it was. And so now it's at 79%. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this marquee tool and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to cut out this part of the layer that I want to add to the other image. So as you can see, it's now selected, and I'm going to do an edit, copy, and then I'm going to go back to the original image and do an edit, paste. So there's my background that I just took out of the previous one. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab it and bring it over to that chair. Now, as you can see, we've got a little bit of a difference up here. So I'm going to have to fix that, but it's also not covering the chair. So what I can do is I could actually do a transform and transform it, but that will kind of drag out the image. So this is what I'm going to do first. I'm going to make, once again, a layer mask. I'm going to use my brush. And remember, we have to have, this time we're going to have a black brush in order to, even though this is black, what we're painting is white. So I still have to have a black brush. And I'm going to go in and I'm just going to start painting. I need to take my opacity back up to 100. I'm going to start painting those edges out because I don't want those edges to be so sharp. Okay? So I'm going to paint those edges out. So the other thing that I can do, once again, is I can turn those layers off and I can make sure that I don't have any sharp edges left on that layer that I'm working on. Now I can do this. I can go back in, I can paste it again. As you can see, I have another one. Once again, I can bring it right over here. And now you can tell that it's almost going to cover that. Now, I know that this is a repeat, and we'll fix that in a minute. But right now, all I'm wanting to do is get rid of that chair. So once again, I'm going to drag it down to a layer mask. I'm going to take my brush. I've got the black selected, and I'm going to, once again, paint out those sharp edges. Now, there's also a sharp edge right here that needs to come out between these two background pastes that I put in here. So if I turn these both off, you can see, and I've taken out just a little bit too much right here. So let me put a little bit of that back in, and I'm going to take out that sharp edge once again. Oops, don't want to do that, do I? Let me put that back in there. Okay, so let me turn this back on. So here we have our background. Now, in order to really work on this and get it where I want it to be, I'm going to have to drop these layers. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn off the bottom layer, and I'm going to do a layer, and I'm going to do a merge visible. And what that does is it merges with the visible layer that is left open. And so now I still have my 2 layers. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a 3rd layer because I want to work on an individual layer each time I do this. And I'm going to grab the patch tool, And all I'm going to do is do some patching in here so that it will help this layer not be so, look like it's just been cut and pasted, okay? So I'm just going to do a little patching here and there, just kind of bring in some different colors, mix them up a little bit so it doesn't look like it's just been completely cloned or whatever you want to call it. I'm even going to patch into this so that this is a little bit of a smoother transition. And you can see it's kind of mushing out and just sort of changing the way that that completely looks. I'm going to do that to this as well. And here. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. We still have a little bit of a repeat down here, but we'll fix that here in a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and make another layer here. Let me drag it down. Hang on. Drag it down. It seems like when I'm recording that my computer gets hung up a lot, so I apologize for that, but I will get it done here in just a second. I'm actually going to take my clone stamp, and once again, because I'm doing this for a painting, it doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to be painted anyway, but I'm going to take my clone stamp and I'm going to use my Alt, and I'm just going to grab some of this red stuff because I want some of that to be up in this area. I don't want all of the red to be down there. I want some of it to be up here, and I want some of these purples as well. So I'm going to take the Alt stamp and stamp some of that purple and bring it up into this area so that we have a little bit of counterbalance with these colors. Because I want the colors to be rich and beautiful for this image, and especially since I'm painting it, I want it to be really gorgeous up in there. Okay, so I'm getting there. I kind of got the colors just pretty close to where I want them. And then once again, we've got the same thing up here. What I'd like to do is this for this upper corner, I really like for it to look a little bit more like this one. So I'm going to grab some of this color with my alt brush, and I'm just going to bring a little bit of it. I'm seeing that I have a little, you see that little line right there? That needs to go. So I'm just going to just take my tool here and drag it over. That pretty much takes care of it. But I'm going to get this stamp again. I'm going to Alt click and get some of this color up in this into this top area. I just feel like it's light up there and it just doesn't look quite right. So I'm just going to bring it up there, and it's going to start to blend in a little bit better with this area. Oops, got that line going on here, and we'll take some of that out. But once again, we've got to get, I just really want to get some of this up in here, some of this darker green to replace this lighter color. Now, if I were doing this for a client, and I would be much more meticulous than this, and I would certainly make sure that there were no stripes or lines that looked really horrible. But once again, I am doing this for a painting class. And in fact, when we are done here, I will give you a link if you would be interested in attending my painting class. You know what? My opacity is down. That's part of the problem. Hang on. Okay, if you're interested in attending the painting class, I'll give you a link here in a little bit, and you can register. I'm only going to, we're only going to have 12 people. It's going to be at our studio here in Oklahoma, and we're going to teach how to get an image ready in Painter for to paint, or how to get it ready in Photoshop, and then to be able to take it into Painter and paint. So if you're interested in that, if you will just register today, that way you can ensure that you have a seat. Okay, so we're just about there. Do you see what I did that? I grabbed some of that flour down below and put that in there. That does not look good. Okay, so now the only other thing that I see here is I need to do something with this up here. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a little bit of this darker brown and green, and I push my Alt key, and I'm just going to bring in some of the greens, some of the darker browns, and bring it up here to the top. Maybe I'll do that. Hang on. Just a little quick tip. If you have this patch tool selected and you've made a change, but you haven't, you have to make sure that that's not still working, or nothing will work. And it drove me crazy the first time that I was working with Photoshop and I couldn't get it figured out what was going on. So you can see it right there. See it? Can you see it sparkling right there? There's a little bitty sparkle right there. And if that's not off, your brushes will not work and it will drive you crazy. I'm seeing a little line there too that needs to be taken care of. And a little one right here. There we go. Okay, so you have to make sure that sparkles off before you try to do anything or it's going to drive you crazy. So anyway, I'm going to hit the Alt key and I'm going to grab some of these darker colors and I'm going to bring them up here and just bring them in to this area. Oh, it's just really driving me crazy here. What's going on? There we go. Now let me take my opacity down a little bit because I don't want to go crazy with this. Just want it to be a little bit darker. Bring in those greens. Like I said, my computer, when I'm trying to record like this, it just kind of gets bogged down. So you'll forgive me for it not being. It's trying to grab her hair for some reason. Hang on. There we go. Okay, so we're going to just bring that in a little. I need to fix that. Hair up there. Pull that over. Yeah. And this looks too, you can see it just looks too much of a line. So if you use that patch tool and you just kind of pull it out, it'll soften a lot of that a lot of the time. The other thing that I could do is I could actually use I could use the history brush and darken it. I think I did a lesson on the history brush a week or two ago, and I could do that to darken some of the areas as well. But right now I just kind of want to show you, oops, still got that marquee going on. Okay, I just want to show you how we can just use this brush and darken it. And once again, if I were doing this for a client, it would be way more ridiculous. But I'm doing this for my painter class. This is going to be one of the images that we're going to actually paint. I have a lot of work to do to it in Photoshop before it'll be ready. But I did want the background to be a little bit more, I wanted it to be a little darker, wanted it to have a little more color, and I wanted it to be just a little bit more fun to paint. So that is it for today. And let me just show you, we came from, well, actually, I won't be able to turn that one off. I'm going to close this one up. This is where we got the background from. Close that one up. So we came from this. Do I have it open still? Maybe I don't have it open. There it is. Okay, sorry about that. We came from this image, as you can see. Make it a little smaller. So I'll get them both on the screen for you. Okay, so we came from this image to this image. And once again, there's a little bit of a haloing around her that I don't like, and I certainly would fix that. And in fact, I might even go in and just very lightly and very softly with a very low opacity, even add some more of that red back there, taking the alt brush and grabbing a little bit of that red and just putting just a drop or two, just a tiny bit in there, just to kind of, so she doesn't have this big halo around her head. So I hope that this helps some, especially with the lightening of shadows or darkening of the shadows. And one of the things that I didn't show you is that you can do the same thing to darken. Real quick. I'm going to grab another layer, and then I can show you when we do the Control M. We've got the palette again for curves. Okay, so we're going to use the Alt key. If I wanted to darken the side of her face a little bit, I could use the Alt key, and I can pick out, the Control key, and I can pick out that brightest spot. It places it on the grid for me. And as you can see, really her highlights look pretty good. They're right where they should be. But if I wanted to darken a little bit, I would just hit the down key, and that would actually darken those highlights. But once again, the problem with that is it's darkening the entire photograph. So what I would have to do is go in and make a layer mask, and once again use a brush. And since it's white over here, I would change it to the black, and I would just paint out the areas that I don't want darkened. For instance, maybe I don't want my background darkened that much. Maybe I don't want the dress, and I certainly don't want her face that I just lightened up a few minutes ago darkened. So I can take that off, all this background up here. Then I can turn off and see what I have left. Look at that. I need to make sure I get rid of all that right here around her face. And that's what we have. And let's say that maybe I did want to darken that background. I can turn this back to white, and I can paint back in what I just did. So maybe I want to, in fact, that looks pretty good. I can actually darken that highlight around her head just a little bit and kind of blend that in just a little bit more. I mean, I do want a little bit of a hot spot, but not quite as much. So I can darken that up a little bit. I can darken these reds up a little bit. I can do it really, I can just do a little bit at a time if I want to. And it doesn't have to be done through the whole image. So I can just darken up certain colors. And especially since I'm going to paint this, that looks pretty good to me. So here we are. We went from this to this. We have her face darkened a little bit on that side over there. We have it lightened up a little bit on the right side. And so that's what we have. Thank you so much for watching. If you are interested in coming to my painter class, it is, you can go to christianprofphotographers.com/painting-workshop. That's christianprofphotographers.com/painting-workshop. And if you go to that link, it'll show you exactly what you need to do to register. So I hope you have a great day. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'd love to hear from you. I know this was really quick, but I hope that it helped in some ways. And if you have anything else you'd like to learn, please let me know. Have a great day, and God bless.